All right, hello, Greg. How are you doing?
I'm alright today.
Um, so we did talk a little bit earlier about some things you were struggling with with a trainee under your wing.
Yes, Annie. We had
Annie.
talked about that.
Yes. How has that been going?
Well, to be honest with you, it's been somewhat of a, well, I'll take the filter out. It's been a struggle. The time needed to train somebody in the material that I have to share is more time than I have to share. So something is going to have to fall by the wayside in my life, in my work life, and potentially in my personal life.
Do you mind if I ask you a little bit more about that?
Please, yeah.
Awesome. What specifically are you struggling with in training Annie?
Well, she's highly educated and very competent, but she has no experience in the industry that we work in. So it's one thing to be highly educated and extremely competent, but to know nothing about the industry you're going into it's like looking at a little piece of the sun through a microscope and trying to grasp the entirety of the sun. It's not possible right away. It takes time. So it's going to take time to bring her up to speed. And time is one thing we don't necessarily have.
We talked a little bit before the meeting about some of your pros and cons. And I had you write them down, and these were the ones we agreed on, and I allowed you to come up with. So some of the pros of training Annie were a decrease of future mistakes, an increase in efficiency, review of the material so you can better it in the future, experiencing the satisfaction of teaching, the ability to teach teamwork so she wouldn't look down on others when she grew into her own employee, reference of your ability in the future. So if you lost your job or for any other reason you needed a reference, she could be a good reference of just how you trained her. Is that correct?
Yes.
An extension, and she could be an extension of positivity through teaching. Really quick, why is that one important to you?
The positivity through teaching, it's a direct reflection of my character. So if I'm a good teacher, then I produce good students who in turn produce good students themselves. So it's a snowball effect. So if I can be the beginning of the snowball, then somebody else can take it along and run with it.
Good. And for some of the cons that we discussed, was that the time you may spend training Annie, it could take away from your job performance, because at the end of the day, you are a worker and you're hired to do a job. Is that correct?
That is.
You may struggle with what to teach based on the complexity of what you may need to teach. Is that right? Or is it, what is it more?
It's selected teaching, so we don't need to discuss everything to the smallest degree, but we do need to hit a broad overview of all topics so that we have a framework for success.
Gotcha. The next con was future problems due to a decrease in training. Oh, I see. Sorry, that was me. So this one, what I experienced was more so if you weren't a good teacher, then like that would reflect poorly back on you in the future.
Yeah.
Like mistakes would come back.
Mistakes will come back to haunt me and the company as a whole, because mistakes cost time and they cost money.
Gotcha.
So.
An increase in stress overall.
Certainly.
A decrease in personal time, and then we kind of looped around to how that could decrease your work performance due to like you wouldn't be functioning at 100%.
Yep, I can't function at 100% at work all the time. I have to have some kind of downtime.
To kind of refresh.
To refresh, yes, certainly. Everybody needs downtime, and if I am denied that, I can sustain it for a week or maybe 2 or 3 weeks,
Mm.
but not for months, or a month, let's say.
Gotcha. So, based on this list that we've kind of discussed, there are more pros than cons. And what this kind of tells me is since the pros are greater than the cons, it could mean that you are, because you're still struggling with this problem, so maybe you're not taking action in this moment, but it could be that you're ready to take action. Is that, what's your take on that?
I'd buy that. I'm mostly, let's say, not afraid, but fearful of the cons overtaking, even though there's more pros, that the cons, as constrictive as they are, will overflow the pros and make the entire experience not worth it and make my life horrible.
What are some so in order for you to find success in training Annie, what do you think would need to happen on your end?
Well, first of all, I think one of the main focuses there, the cons, was the time scheduling.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to have to be much more diligent with my time.
Mm-hmm.
I can't, the thought of spending 15 minutes sitting at my desk doing nothing needs to disappear and turn into real valuable time.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to look at my time as more of a value added asset where I can't afford to waste time.
Mm-hmm. So how do you think you can, what I heard you say was, and I do experience you as perhaps feeling a little overwhelmed, am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little overwhelmed, and what I heard you say was that like managing those, like managing your time and like not having those gaps of time where you're not doing anything, that would be really important in order for you to have success in training Annie. Is that correct?
Yes, I need to be much more diligent in scheduling. If we're going to train, we're going to train. If I'm going to do my job, then I need to set aside time to do my job.
Mm-hmm.
And the two should not overlap, and I can't put one above the other in priority.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, Annie's going to have to take a back seat to immediate priorities.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a prioritization problem.
So how do you think you can be more diligent with your time specifically?
Probably what I could do is, not probably, what I've done in the past is actually block out focus time in my calendar.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll look at my calendar as a whole on the week, starting Monday, and block out time in 2-hour increments on a daily basis to focus in on just training. And that leaves potentially 6 to 8 hours where I'm doing my regular job and I'm only dedicating 2 hours to Annie's training.
Mm-hmm.
That's had some success. Typically what happens though is I'll look at the most immediate need and most pressing need in front of me and attack that first and get completely sidetracked with my day and just delete the focus time and in essence delete Annie off my schedule.
Mm-hmm. So you said there was partial success in what kind of got in the way of those successes?
Personally, I'm built to be a people pleaser.
Mm-hmm.
So whoever comes up to me first, or whoever is right in front of my face, is going to get my attention.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have a project that is due 6 months down the road and I know I must work on every day, it's not right in front of my face, so I'm going to push that to the back of the list and deal with just the most immediate boosts of, let's say, success that I can. So I will push those priorities first, and anything else that's a more distant priority, even if it's just a week out or 2 weeks out, receives no attention. So it's the desire for me to be, to have those instant success boosts to my ego. It's basically an ego thing.
So talking about blocking out those things. Do you think so? There are some strategies you can use to help you kind of reach forward to progress. Some of those are doing like performing the behavior, like setting aside time, like whether that's focus time, whether blocking it out, or just overall time. And we'll wrap back around to that. Doing it especially when you don't want to. So like instead of kind of going with the flow of getting sidetracked, you can like really focusing on doing it when you really don't want to. Reaching out to coworkers or family or friends to help support you in that. When you participate in a behavior, rewarding yourself. So those are some strategies. Do you think those would be helpful now, or is the problem more with blocking out your time and making that a priority?
I think the one of the main issues that you touched upon was the asking for help, and then using my coworkers, not using them, involving them in training where it's appropriate. Because I'm not necessarily expected to train everything, but what I could do is train the main things and then allow coworkers and fellow engineers to take the reins, so to speak, and go off into this particular land of training, and then take somebody else and take her into this area and this arena. So utilizing other people's talents to help me out would be good.
So since you have identified that and utilizing the help of other people, by doing that to help you train Annie, how by using that as a means, how confident are you that you can use that to help train Annie, like based on a scale of 1 to 10? Does that question make sense?
Yeah. I think utilizing other people's talents, my effectiveness in that area has been very low in the past because my trust level of other people is very low. So unfortunately, it's a limiting factor in all areas of my career where I don't trust people. So then I don't allow them to help me. So it wouldn't matter how much time I blocked out to help somebody else help me. If I don't trust them to help me, then it's not going to be of any, I won't see the value in it. So I kind of look at myself as I'm the only one who's qualified to do it. I was asked to do it. The responsibility is ultimately mine. And if I fail, then it's my responsibility, not somebody else's.
So, kind of when you were first talking about that, you said you hadn't performed very high in that category of like putting that trust into other people. Do you think do you think that practicing that, like maybe just like a little skill at a time, do you think that would help you build your trust in other people? Or do you think it would take a grand step for you personally?
No, there will be no grand steps because I would have to turn loose of everything all at once. So I think the point of success would lie in taking baby steps and trusting other people with one aspect of manufacturing that occupies only a 10-minute space, let's say, and expect them to train Annie on just that one section, and then pull her back and have her report back to me on how she did. And then I would build my trust, and it's like, okay, that 10 minutes that I allowed somebody else to take her and teach her was worth my time.
So I think from what I've heard, taking the little steps would help you build your trust little by little, as like if you started to see successes in trusting people with that time. So how confident are you that you can use that tool to help train Annie, just in little steps, on a scale of 1 to 10?
Little steps. I would say a 6 or a 7. It's a major roadblock in my life. So higher than middle ground, but
Mhm.
not exactly 8 or 9.
Mhm. Well, I'm happy it's not a 0, because that means you would have no faith. So what would it take for it to be like? What would an 8 or 9 or 10 mean? Like, what would that? What would you have to? What kind of mindset would you have to get into, or what kind of practices would you have to? Do you kind of understand the question I'm asking?
Yeah, I think
Yeah. Like, what would it take for you to get to an 8 or 9?
exactly. I think a 10 would be unachievable
Okay.
because that would mean I'd be balanced on all fronts at all times,
Mm-hmm.
and that's achievable for 5 or 10 minutes at a time.
So maybe not as realistic in your homework.
Yeah, not realistic. But let's say an 8 or a 9. Let's say an 8. Even a 9 is awfully high, but an 8 would be probably just taking the small steps, blocking out time with a specific small step on a specific day for a specific subject, and having already coordinated with somebody else. It's like, will you please help me teach Annie this skill, and then turn it over to that person. So basically plan for success
Mm-hmm.
in that way, and then just see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
So for me to be successful in that, I'd have to receive the positive feedback that, oh yeah, she learned that, it's not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Move on to the next thing.
So what it sounds like is you do. So like we've talked about cons, we've talked about pros. We've kind of talked about how you've been doing and what you've been struggling with, and then you highlighted how reaching out to others and utilizing that tool could be really helpful in teaching her because of the time management and how even though like you may feel like you need to train her, it may not be realistic with what is required of you for your job.
Yes.
But it also sounds like you have a plan. And here's what I heard your plan was, which blocking out a time on a day, and these are things that would get you to an 8. Blocking out time on a specific day with a person you've coordinated with for Annie to learn a specific skill.
Yes, that's a good summation of it.
Mm-hmm. And do you think? So you said yourself this would be like an ideal 8. What would it take for you to apply this?
Pressure. I would need to have some amount of pressure applied to me, like a deadline.
Mm-hmm.
Like basically a deadline, and a concrete list of items that need to be learned by Annie. Not just teach her the entire world of the industry, but teach her these 5 or 10 basic principles of the industry, and then allow her to dig in and learn on her own.
Mm-hmm.
With the basics, with the foundation in place. So it would require, if I understood the question correctly, it would require me to be deliberate,
Mm-hmm.
and it would require me to
Have a deadline.
have a deadline and ask for help and trust that help is reliable.
All right, so I'd say following this, blocking out a time on a specific day with coordinated person for a specific skill. Do you think maybe just doing it once this next week would be a small enough step, and maybe giving yourself a deadline? When do you think would be a realistic deadline?
Oh, for that particular small issue, it would be this week.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be literally probably a handful of subjects that would be taught by the manufacturing team. And so the deadline would be this week, I would think, since it's so simple. Really,
Mm-hmm.
It's simple.
Mm-hmm.
And it just requires trusting other people,
Mm-hmm.
which is a big deal. When it's my reputation online to trust somebody else to do the job right, and tie it back to my reputation is it's a big deal.
Mm-hmm. So a deadline this week, what day specifically?
Oh, let's say by, well, you can't wait till Thursday, so let's say by Wednesday, well, no, let's have the plan. The plan of action would be Wednesday. So the action day is Wednesday. The plan would be formulated on Monday, 'cause I'd have to contact the right people and the right resources. And then Tuesday would be the day for possible rejection or replanning or recoordinating. And Wednesday would be the actual execution of the training outside of my sphere.
Mm-hmm.
So not me training anybody, turning her over to somebody else to be trained.
Mm-hmm. And how many skills do you think would be reasonable? Rather than a handful, a specific number would help you be more successful.
Oh, let's see. Oh, let's say seven specific skills. Yeah, 7, because there's probably a total of 15. So if she could learn half, that would be, the foundation would be laid.
So do you want her to learn 7 skills, or do you want her to learn 4?
Okay, 7.
So you want her to learn all 7?
Well, 7 of 15. So there's a total of 15 skills to be learned, but we don't have time to learn all 15 to the nth degree. We only have so much time. So if she can learn the basic 7 manufacturing skills that most people are aware of, then she would be well prepared to, when she experiences the other 6 or the other 7 or 8, however many there are, she'd have the knowledge and the confidence to take on those herself.
Mm-hmm.
Just go investigate and learn about it on her own.
All right. So did we agree on 7 out of 15?
7, yeah.
7 out of 7. Okay. So with this more specific plan, the day of action would be Wednesday. The kind of communication day would be Tuesday, based on like yes or no. And then Monday would be the day where you would contact for her to learn 7 to 15 skills.
7 out of 15, yeah.
7 out of 15.
Yep.
Well, it sounds like you've given yourself deadline. It sounds like one thing that would help to encourage you with this behavior is reaching out to somebody, and that's kind of what this plan is centered around. And it sounds like you have a solid plan.
Yeah, I think so. Now that I look back on it, it's centered around trust. And if I can learn to trust my fellow human being, then it would make my life a lot simpler.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for your time. We can discuss specifics about following through with this, and then I will see you. Can you do next week?
Yes, I think next week would be a good time, because we'll have evidence. We'll have the hard evidence whether or not we succeeded or not. So.
All right, next week.
All
Thank you,
right.
Greg.
You're welcome.
Oof.